She sat high in the bleachers, alone, as if distance could shield her from what was about to happen. The gym was crowded, buzzing with parents, chatter, squeaky sneakers, and the sharp barks of martial arts commands echoing across the floor. But her presence went unnoticed, deliberately unnoticed. She had perfected that art for 12 long years. Why did she hesitate when her name was called? Why did her son's shoulders tense the moment every eye in the gym turned toward her? Sarah Mitchell had built her life around being invisible. And now, all at once, that wall of quiet anonymity was cracking. The quarterly demonstration at high school was supposed to be simple: parents applauding, kids bowing, instructors showing off techniques rehearsed 100 times. Sarah had not even planned on being there. Her work schedule had given her the perfect excuse, but an afternoon cancellation forced her into the bleachers. She told herself she was only there for nothing more. But then a smiling woman named, all cheer and curiosity, slid onto the bench beside her. A handshake, a question, a cheerful mention of martial arts instructor and the prestige of the program. Sarah kept her responses short, polite, never more than a few words. Her eyes were fixed on her son. His white belt hung loose around his waist, his movements crisp but restrained. His shouts were softer than the others, and every time he finished a sequence, his eyes darted to her, not for approval, for fear. Fear that his mother might not be impressed, or worse, that she might stand out among the crowd. The instructor master was nothing if not dramatic. He prowled the mat in his black uniform, his voice rising and falling like a stage actor. "Louder," he commanded, emphasizing theatrics over discipline. Parents clapped, children tried harder, and the gym felt more like a performance hall than a training space. But then came his invitation, his trap really. "Do we have any parents with martial arts or military backgrounds who might help with today's demonstration?" His eyes scanned the bleachers, hungry for volunteers. Before Sarah could fade further into the shadows, his hand shot up. She was military. His voice pierced the air, bright and certain, her finger aimed at Sarah like an accusation. The crowd's attention shifted, whispers rushed through the rows. "That's Mom. I heard she only did desk work. She doesn't look like she could fight." His face drained of color, his chin tucked down, his shoulders sinking as if he could fold himself out of sight. And Sarah, against every instinct, stood. Her steps toward the mat were unhurried, precise. She smoothed her cardigan, kept her face neutral. Nothing about her posture announced readiness, and yet everything about it did. Master's grin widened. He loved the theater of it all. A simple demonstration, he promised. Nothing too physical, just to show that size and strength don't matter when technique is correct. He spoke as if lecturing a crowd of admirers, not addressing the woman who now stood before him. Phones rose in eager hands, parents leaned forward, children fidgeted, and stared at the floor. The rubber knife gleamed blue under the gym's harsh lights. Brandished it with exaggerated menace, smirking at Sarah as though she were about to become the punchline of his show. But Sarah's eyes, they weren't on him. They swept the gym with quiet calculation, exits, distances, obstacles. Her weight was balanced evenly between both feet. A small scar glinted at her temple, half hidden beneath strands of silver hair. "Ready?" asked, puffing his chest. A single nod, nothing more. He lunged, far faster than he had promised. No slow-motion demonstration, no courtesy. He wanted to catch her off guard, to make her look foolish. But the next moment was over before anyone truly saw it. Her right hand intercepted his wrist with surgical precision, redirecting his momentum instead of resisting it. The knife clattered across the floor, bouncing against the mat. His arm bent backward at an impossible angle as his body crashed downward, pinned beneath her weightless control. 1 second, 2. He was immobilized, face pressed to the mat, his expression contorted in shock. And she looked almost bored. The gym fell silent. Parents froze mid-recording. Students stopped breathing. The air itself seemed suspended. Then calmly, deliberately, Sarah released him, straightened her cardigan, stepped back as if nothing had happened. Rose slowly, rubbing his wrist, his showman's mask shattered. He was no longer the master on stage. He was a man who had just been humbled. From the back of the gym, an older figure stood. Rigid posture, weathered face, eyes sharp with recognition. He whispered a name under his breath, not the name the crowd knew, but another. Mitchell, Phoenix Division. He stepped forward, formal, respectful, and in front of the entire gym he saluted. Sarah's return was crisp, perfect, as though 12 years had not dulled the reflex. "Commander Mitchell," he said quietly, "Baghdad, 2007. His world shifted. His mother wasn't just mom. She wasn't just an accountant. She was someone else entirely. Someone the world had overlooked. Someone who had lived a life no one dared to imagine." And in that stunned silence, in that moment of revelation, the past she had buried for over a decade cracked open. The woman she thought she had left behind was standing on that mat again. The applause never came. Only whispers, murmurs, and the uneasy realization spreading through the crowd. The quiet woman in the bleachers had just revealed herself as something more than any of them had expected. For it wasn't awe, it wasn't pride. It was confusion, 1,000 questions rising at once. Why hadn't she told him? Why had she hidden this? And what did it mean for the life they thought they had? As the gym emptied, Sarah walked with her son in silence toward their car. His voice trembled when he finally spoke. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" She stopped, turned to face him, placed her hands gently on his shoulders. "Because I wanted you to know me as your mother first," she said softly, "not as what I used to be." And then she whispered words that carried the weight of every fallen comrade, every scar, every memory she could never erase. "The real heroes are the ones who never came home. I just did my job." Her son's world would never be the same, and neither would hers. But deep inside, beneath her calm exterior, Sarah Mitchell felt something she had not felt in 12 years. The shadows were moving again. And she knew they had finally found her. Why did the house feel different now? Why did every corner, every familiar sound, suddenly seem charged with secrets? Sat at the kitchen table, his dinner plate untouched, staring at his mother as if she were a stranger. The quiet accountant who balanced books for small businesses, the woman who nagged him about homework and vegetables, had just bent a martial arts instructor in half like he was made of paper. And worse, she had saluted another soldier like it was second nature. "Mom," he blurted, his voice sharp in the silence, "were you really a commander?" Sarah's knife stilled against the cutting board. For a long moment she didn't answer. Then quietly, "Yes." The word hung in the air, heavy, unshakable. Leaned forward, almost desperate. "In what unit?" She met his eyes, calm but unyielding. "Phoenix Division." He frowned. He had never heard of it. "Is that like Army, Special Forces?" "Something like that." But she didn't elaborate. She never did. Every question seemed to ricochet off the same invisible wall she had built around herself. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" he demanded, frustration spilling into his voice. "I'm your son. Shouldn't I know who you are?" Sarah set the knife down gently and turned toward him. "Precisely because you're my son. I didn't want you growing up in my shadow. I wanted you to have a normal life." Almost laughed. "Normal? We've moved 3 times since I was 10. You always sit facing the door in restaurants. You have cameras hidden in the porch lights. That's not normal." Her silence was the only confirmation he needed. The questions piled in his throat until one slipped out in a whisper he almost regretted asking. Did you ever kill anyone?" Sarah's eyes flickered just for a moment, but that moment was enough. "That's not something I discuss," she said softly, "not even with you." The finality in her tone ended the conversation, but it didn't end his thoughts. That night, while she slept, searched. Phoenix Division, NSA. Baghdad 2007, his mother's name paired with the words military and classified. Nothing. Just conspiracy theories, old redacted documents, half-legends whispered in internet corners. It was as if Sarah Mitchell had been erased. He leaned back, frustrated, knocking over his model rocket. It rolled across the floor toward the baseboard and stopped against a narrow seam, too straight to be accidental. Pressed, the wood gave slightly, swinging open like a hidden door. Inside lay a metal lockbox, smooth, featureless. No keyhole, no dial, just a faint indentation shaped for a fingerprint. He pressed his thumb against it. Nothing. Of course. It was keyed to her, not him. Heart pounding, he slid it back into place and closed the wall. But the truth had already settled into his bones. His mother wasn't just hiding memories. She was hiding her entire life. And maybe hiding from something still out there. The next morning, whispers followed through the school halls. Videos of the demonstration had already spread. Students who had never looked at him twice now pointed, stared, whispered. "That's her son. My dad said she moved so fast he had to watch in slow motion. Was she like a spy or something?" Kept his head down, unsure if he wanted to defend her or distance himself from her. At lunch, Jake, captain of the wrestling team, someone who had barely spoken to him before, dropped his tray across from him. "Dude," Jake said in a low voice, "is it true? Your mom was like James Bond." Stabbed at his food, annoyed. "She was in some special unit, that's all I know." "Yeah, but she's a woman. I thought they didn't let women in combat." "Officially," muttered, "but apparently there are programs nobody talks about." Jake whistled. "Man, that's intense. What else did she tell you?" "Nothing," snapped. "She doesn't talk about it." But the truth stung more than he expected. His mother hadn't just hidden things from the world. She'd hidden them from him. When he got home, she was at the kitchen table, her laptop open, surrounded by papers, the image of normalcy. Except he knew better now. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" he blurted again, unable to let it go. Sarah gestured for him to sit. "Because when I left that life behind, I chose to be only your mother, not Commander Mitchell, not Phoenix Division, just Mom." "But you're not just Mom," his voice cracked. "You've been lying to me my whole life." Her expression softened, though her posture remained straight. "Not a lie, a boundary for your protection." "Protection from what?" The doorbell rang. Sarah's posture shifted instantly, shoulders squared, eyes sharp. She moved to the window, standing at an angle invisible to whoever stood outside. Then slowly she relaxed. "It's Colonel Hayes." The same man who had saluted her in the gym. He stood on the porch, civilian clothes, doing little to disguise his military bearing. "Commander Mitchell," he said with gravity when she opened the door. "I apologize for the intrusion, but we need to talk." Stomach tightened. Something in Hayes's tone told him this wasn't just a reunion. Inside, Hayes shook his hand firmly. "Good to meet you properly, son. Your mother is one of the finest soldiers I ever knew." Sat awkwardly, his heart racing. Sarah's voice was firm. "Hayes, if this is about reactivation, the answer is no." "Not reactivation," he said quickly. "But your cover is blown. That video already has over 1 million views. Facial recognition is running wild. It's only a matter of time before certain parties connect Sarah Mitchell, the accountant, with Commander Mitchell of Phoenix Division." Froze. "Certain parties, what does that mean?" Hayes exchanged a glance with Sarah, who gave the faintest nod. "Your mother made enemies," Hayes said carefully. "People who never forget, people without scruples." Silence stretched. Sarah crossed her arms, calm but hard. "I've maintained protocols, changed identities, moved when necessary." "And now your face is everywhere," Hayes countered. "The digital age changes everything. They'll find you." Swallowed, his voice small. "Are we in danger?" Hayes didn't answer immediately. When he finally spoke, his tone was quiet but unshakable. Precautions would be wise. Sarah's jaw tightened. You're suggesting Redwood. Hayes nodded. Looked between them. What's Redwood? Sarah's answer was clipped. Relocation, new identities disappearing again. His chest tightened. But my friends, my school, everything. You'll live, she said firmly. Your safety comes first. But there was something in her eyes, a flicker of pain she rarely let slip. He knew this wasn't easy for her either. As Hayes left, pressing a card into Sarah's hand, sat frozen at the kitchen table, his world tilting under him. Mom, he whispered when the door closed, are we really in danger? Her voice softened, but her eyes didn't. There's always danger. I've spent 12 years keeping it away from you, but now it's here. And somewhere outside, unseen, a dark sedan idled on a quiet Nebraska street, watching their house, recording their lights, waiting. Sarah Mitchell had kept her past buried for 12 years, but the past was moving toward her again. And this time, it wasn't going to let her run. Why did the house feel so heavy tonight? Why did every creak of the wood and every distant car on the street sound like a threat? Lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, but his mind raced far from sleep. The image of his mother pinning Master to the mat replayed in his head again and again. The way she moved, too fast, too precise. Not something you learned from a self-defense class. That wasn't training for confidence. That was training for survival. He rolled onto his side. The house was quiet, too quiet. Then, as his elbow brushed the rug near his desk, it shifted slightly, revealing something beneath. A seam. He froze. Heart pounding, pulled the rug back. The hardwood planks formed a perfect square, a trapdoor. Hands trembling, he pressed one edge. With a faint click, the panel lifted. Inside was a compartment larger than the one he'd found in the wall. A sealed waterproof case. A rolled document that looked like blueprints, and an old metal ammunition box. He hesitated. Then he pulled the box out. The lid wasn't locked. Inside lay photographs. His mother in desert camouflage, standing with a group of men and women in front of a nondescript building. Another photo of her receiving a medal from a stern-looking man in a suit. A third showed her inside a military transport, seated among 3 others, all geared up for some kind of operation. On the back of that photo, handwriting. Phoenix Team Alpha, Baghdad insertion, December 2006. Turner, Mitchell. Stared at the names. Turner. His mother's team, the ones Hayes had mentioned, the ones who hadn't come back. The floor creaked outside his room. Panic shot through him. He shoved the photos back into the box, replaced it in the compartment, and pulled the rug back just as the door opened. His mother stood in the doorway, her face unreadable. "You should be asleep," she said softly. "I couldn't," admitted. Too much to think about." She lingered, watching him, and for a terrifying second he thought she had seen everything. Then she nodded once. "It'll take time to process. Good night." "Night, Mom." When she closed the door, lay back, his chest pounding. The pictures had shown him a side of her he could barely comprehend, confident, armed, surrounded by comrades. Not the quiet accountant who balanced budgets and maid. His mother was a soldier who had once led men and women into danger. And somehow, she was the only one who had walked away. Across the street, in the shadows of a parked sedan, a man lowered his night vision binoculars. He had just watched the upstairs light switch off. "Confirmed location," he whispered into his phone. "Mitchell and the boy, just as facial recognition suggested." The voice on the other end was cold. "Surveillance only, no contact until authorized." The man nodded, though no one could see. "Understood. But if it really is her, then we've found the last survivor of Phoenix Division, the only person who knows where the Baghdad files are hidden." The call ended. The sedan rolled away, headlights still dark, blending into the Nebraska night. But inside her bedroom, Sarah Mitchell had been listening. She hadn't seen the car, but she had heard it. The faint purr of an engine idling too long, the shift of tires on gravel when it moved away. Sounds most people would ignore. Sounds she could never ignore. Contrary to what believed, she had never truly stopped being vigilant. For 12 years, she had memorized every street sound, every unfamiliar engine, every pause in the neighborhood's nightly rhythm. She lay awake, her hand brushing the scar at her temple, the same scar from Baghdad, the night everything had gone wrong, the night her team had died, the night she had discovered, hours later in a field hospital, that she was carrying. Now the past was circling back. She whispered into the dark, "Turner, I kept my promise, I kept it safe, and I will keep him safe, whatever it takes." Sleep didn't come. Instead, she rose and moved silently to the window, scanning the empty street with eyes that never truly rested. The quiet life she had built in was unraveling, and the question she had avoided for 12 years pressed hard against her chest. Run again or fight at last? By dawn, she had made her choice, but would never see his mother the same way again. Why was she packing the pantry at dawn? Why did the woman who had once scolded him for forgetting his gym shoes now measure out canned goods and bottled water with the precision of a quartermaster? Leaned against the doorway, watching his mother sort supplies into 2 neat piles on the kitchen table. Flashlights, first aid kits, batteries. "What are you doing?" he asked. Her voice was calm but clipped. "Teaching you." "Teaching me what? How to be paranoid?" Her eyes flicked up sharp. "How to survive." Opened his mouth to argue but stopped. There was something in her gaze, steady, unflinching, that made his words shrivel. She slid a flashlight across the table. "Check the batteries." He sighed, clicked it on. The beam cut through the early morning dimness. "Works." "Now take out the batteries. Reverse them, put them back." "Why?" "Because sometimes the simplest way to make sure nobody drains your tools is to break the circuit. Small habits save lives." He frowned but obeyed. Next came the first aid kit. She opened it, laying out bandages, antiseptic, a tourniquet. "Tell me which of these you'd use if I was bleeding heavily from my leg." "Mom." "Answer." Hesitated, pointed to the bandage. Her hand moved fast. She grabbed his wrist, pressed his palm against her thigh firm. "Feel that? The artery runs here. If someone's bleeding there, a bandage won't help. They'll be dead in minutes without pressure or a tourniquet. Remember that." He pulled his hand back, uneasy. "Why are you doing this? Why now?" Sarah paused, her shoulders sagging for just a second. "Because yesterday ended the life we had, and I need you ready even if you hate me for it." The words stung more than he wanted to admit. They spent the next hour moving through drills, lighting a fire with a striker, packing a go bag, identifying exits in every room. Protests dwindled, replaced by a quiet, simmering fear. By the time the sun had fully risen, he felt like he'd been pulled into a world he hadn't chosen. A world where his mother was Mom anymore. She was Commander Mitchell, and she was recruiting him without permission. A knock at the door broke the silence. Sarah's hand brushed her hip instinctively, a gesture realized she used to make when she carried something there. Now she only had kitchen scissors, but the reflex was still alive. She peeked through the curtain, relaxed only slightly. "Colonel Hayes." She opened the door, voice low. "You shouldn't be here." "Neither should you," he replied. He stepped in, shutting the door quickly behind him. His eyes swept the room, everything the way soldiers do. His expression was tight, graver than the night before. "They're here," he said. Froze. "Who's here?" Sarah answered first. "The men watching the house last night." Hayes nodded. "Confirmed. Foreign operatives, likely contractors, hired hands but highly trained. They've been running silent surveillance on ex-members of Phoenix Division for years. I thought you were safe, Sarah. I was wrong. His pulse thudded in his ears. He looked at his mom. So they're coming after you for what? Hayes's gaze was steady, but his words were heavier than stone. For what Phoenix carried out in Baghdad. For the files your mother secured. Files people will kill to retrieve. Sarah's jaw tightened. We destroyed those. Hayes shook his head. Maybe you believed that, but intelligence says fragments survived, and someone out there thinks you know where. His voice cracked. Do you? Sarah didn't answer. Her silence was louder than anything. Hayes pressed on. You need to relocate today. Redwood is prepped. We can disappear you both before nightfall. Sarah's hand closed around the back of a chair. Running means they'll never stop. They'll chase us to the end of the earth. My son deserves better than living in shadows. You think staying here gives him better? Hayes snapped, his military patience fraying. You'll get him killed. The room vibrated with silence. Felt his throat close, his eyes darting between them. Stop, he said finally, his voice thin. You're both talking like I'm not standing here, like I don't have a say in any of this. Sarah turned to him, her face softening but not enough. No, he cut her off. You've been hiding everything from me my whole life. And now I find out people want to kill you, kill us, and all I get is half answers. If we're in danger, then tell me the truth. All of it. The demand hung in the air. But before Sarah could speak, Hayes's phone buzzed. He answered, face shifting as he listened. Copy. His eyes flicked to Sarah. They know. The operatives just pulled into town. 3 vehicles, south edge. They'll be here within the hour. His chest clenched. Here now. Sarah's voice was steady, chillingly so. Then we don't have an hour. She moved fast, pulled the pantry supplies into a duffel, tucked the pistol Hayes handed her into her waistband like it belonged there, grabbed by the shoulders and looked him straight in the eyes. You stay with me, she said firmly. No questions, no hesitation. Do exactly what I tell you. He nodded, terrified but unable to speak. Hayes's tone was urgent. There's a safe route west. I'll cover the rear. But Sarah was already moving, her mind ticking like a clock. Routes, cover, escape windows. And for the first time in his life, realized his mother wasn't just protecting him. She was preparing to fight for him. As they slipped out the back door into the blinding Nebraska daylight, the world outside felt different. Every street could be a trap, every shadow a pair of eyes. And couldn't help but wonder, was this the first day of the rest of their lives? Or the last? Why did the air outside feel so sharp, so thin, like even the sky knew something was coming? Followed close as his mother pulled him down the alley behind their house, the duffel bouncing against her shoulder, her pace brisk but silent. Hayes trailed behind, scanning rooftops, every turn of his head precise and practiced. They didn't look like neighbors going for a walk. They looked like fugitives. His heart pounded so loudly he thought it might give them away. Mom, he whispered, where are we even going? Sarah didn't slow. Away from here. Yeah, but where? Her voice was clipped, somewhere safe. He hated that answer. He hated the way it always felt like a locked door he wasn't allowed to open. But the urgency in her eyes and Hayes's constant glances over his shoulder told him this wasn't the time to argue. They reached the end of the alley and Hayes raised a fist, signaling them to stop. A dark SUV cruised past at the far end of the street, windows tinted, too slow, too careful. His chest tightened. Hayes's whisper was gravel. Scouts, 2 in the front, maybe 1 in the back, they'll circle. Sarah's hand closed on his wrist. Move. They darted across the street, cutting through the backyard of a house with an overgrown lawn. A dog barked from inside, claws scraping against a window. Stumbled, catching himself against the fence. Quiet, Sarah hissed. They crouched low, slipping through another yard, then another, weaving through the patchwork of fences and garages until they reached the cracked asphalt of a side road. Parked at the edge, half hidden beneath an elm tree, sat an old station wagon. Rust clung to the wheel wells. A faded sticker peeled from the bumper. Hayes pulled out the keys. Borrowed it from a contact, nothing fancy, nothing traceable. Sarah checked the back seat first, then the trunk, her movements quick and methodical. Only after she was satisfied did she wave inside. The door creaked as he slid in. The smell of old fabric and motor oil filled his nose. His knees bounced with nervous energy. Hayes started the engine, the low rumble vibrating through the car. Sarah sat beside, one hand resting lightly on the duffel, the other tapping against her thigh in a rhythm recognized. Not nerves, calculation. "Where are we going?" asked again. Sarah glanced at Hayes, then back at him. "West, into the hills, there's a safe house." "How far?" "Far enough." The answer chilled him more than it reassured. The station wagon rolled onto the main road, blending into sparse traffic. For a while, silence reigned, broken only by the hum of tires and uneven breathing. He tried to watch the landscape blur past the fields, the gas stations, the quiet Nebraska morning, but his thoughts wouldn't settle. Finally he spoke, his voice low. "So all those times we moved, was it because of them?" Sarah's eyes softened just slightly. "Yes." "And you never told me." "I wanted you to believe we could have normalcy, even if only for a little while." He shook his head, biting back anger. "Normal? You call this normal?" He gestured at the road, the duffel, the way Hayes's hand never strayed far from the pistol on his thigh. Sarah's reply was quiet but firm. "Alive is normal enough." Before could respond, Hayes stiffened in the driver's seat. Vehicle 2 o'clock, closing fast. Twisted around. In the side mirror, a dark SUV was approaching, closing the gap with deliberate steadiness. His stomach dropped. "It's them." Hayes didn't answer. His hands tightened on the wheel, his eyes darting between the road and the mirror. Sarah's voice was calm, almost cold. "Stay steady. Don't react until they do." The SUV drew closer, close enough now that could see the outline of two men in the front. For one terrible moment, they drove in parallel silence, the SUV hovering just behind their left flank, like a predator waiting for the right angle. Then it surged forward. The window rolled down. A camera lens emerged, pointed directly at their car. "They're confirming visual," Hayes muttered. Sarah's jaw tightened. "Then we can't go to Redwood, it's compromised already." "Where then?" Hayes demanded. Her eyes flicked to, then back to the road. "Somewhere they won't expect, somewhere off the grid." The SUV lingered a moment longer, then slowed abruptly, peeling off down an exit ramp without warning. Exhaled shakily. "Why did they just leave?" "They didn't," Sarah said softly. "They marked us, and now they're letting someone else do the hunting." The words settled in his chest like ice. For the next hour, tension thickened. Every car that appeared every truck that loomed too close felt like a threat. Fingers dug crescents into the seat cushion, his pulse refusing to calm. Finally, Sarah leaned close, her voice a whisper meant only for him. "Listen to me. You're going to see things you're not ready for. You're going to hear things you wish you hadn't, but you need to stay steady. No matter what happens, you look at me. Not them, me. Understand?" His throat tightened, he nodded. Hayes turned the car off the highway, down a gravel road lined with skeletal trees. Dust rose behind them, the landscape growing emptier, quieter. But quiet wasn't safe, not anymore. Half a mile down, the wagon jolted hard. Hayes cursed under his breath, steering to the shoulder. A tire hissed violently, rubber shredding against gravel. His chest clenched, flat. Hayes nodded, already reaching for the jack. "Keep watch," he said. Sarah's eyes scanned the tree line. The air felt too still, the silence too heavy. followed her gaze, his heart hammering. And then just barely he saw it, a glint between the trees, like sunlight catching glass. Binoculars or a scope. He froze, his voice cracked. "Mom." Her hand was already on his chest, pushing him down into the seat. Her other hand slid to the waistband where Hayes's pistol now rested. The quiet Nebraska countryside was no longer empty. It was a battlefield. And the past she had fought to bury was unfolding right in front of her son. Why was the silence louder than the engine? Why did every second stretch, as if the world was holding its breath? Lay low in the backseat, his mother's hand firm against his chest, pinning him down. Through the window, the gravel road shimmered under the pale sun, the trees too still, too perfect. Hayes crouched by the car, jack in hand, the ruined tire sagging against the rim. His eyes flicked up once, sharp and deliberate, to Sarah. No words, just a soldier's signal. Something was wrong. Sarah's voice was barely above a whisper. "Breathe slow, quiet." He tried, but his lungs refused to listen. His eyes darted to her waistband, the pistol Hayes had given her. He had never seen her hold a weapon. He had never wanted to. But now, the way her hand curled near it, calm and sure, made him feel like she had never truly let go of it. The sound came then. Not a bird, not a squirrel. A soft click, metal on metal, carried faintly through the trees. Safety off. Hayes froze by the tire. Slowly, deliberately, he let the jack slip from his hand, raising both palms just slightly as if surrendering to the quiet. Then the first voice cut the air, male, steady, accented. "Commander Mitchell." Sarah stiffened. The man stepped from the trees, rifle cradled, casual but ready. Two more followed, fanning out. Their clothing was civilian, but the posture was unmistakable. Operators. Contracted, trained, deadly. His breath caught. They knew her name, not the one on her tax forms, the other one, the one she'd buried. The lead man's smile was thin. "We thought you were dead, but here you are, alive. That complicates things." Sarah eased open the car door, stepping out slowly, body angled to shield. Her voice was flat, stripped of warmth. "You don't belong here." "Neither do you," the man countered. "Phoenix Division, Baghdad, you remember what was taken, where it was hidden." Sarah's jaw tightened. "Destroyed." "Not all of it," he said smoothly. "There are buyers who believe otherwise, people who will pay for what you know, where it lies." His pulse thundered. Files, Baghdad. The pieces he'd overheard were real. His mom wasn't just hiding from shadows, she was hiding from the kind of men who killed for secrets. The man tilted his head. "You could give us the location, walk away alive, or refuse." His smile widened, cruel. "And the boy watches you die." His blood ran cold. Hayes shifted slightly, tension radiating off him, but his hands remained raised. Outnumbered. One wrong move and it would end here. Sarah's eyes never left the leader. For a long moment the silence pressed. Then, softly, "You don't know what you're asking for." The man chuckled. "Oh, I do, and I know you can't protect him forever." His chin tipped toward in the car. Sarah's hand moved. Not hesitation, not warning. Just motion, fast, precise. In less than a breath her pistol cleared leather. One shot cracked the silence. The leader's shoulder jerked back, his rifle dropping as he stumbled. Hayes moved instantly, diving for the jack, swinging it in a brutal arc that knocked another man's weapon wide. Chaos erupted. Pressed himself into the seat, hands over his ears, heart thundering as the world exploded outside the car. Dust kicked up, shouts in languages he didn't understand, the metallic ring of a weapon striking stone. And his mother, his quiet, ordinary mother, moved like something out of a nightmare. She flowed between them, her body low, her aim merciless. Every motion had purpose, nothing wasted. A sidestep, a strike to the wrist, a shot to the ground that made one man retreat in panic. Hayes wrestled with the third, their struggle brutal and close, until Sarah's hand pressed his shoulder back and she finished it herself with terrifying precision. Then silence again. His ears rang. The smell of gunpowder clung to the air. 3 men lay on the ground, groaning, disarmed but alive. Sarah stood above them, chest rising and falling, her pistol steady in her grip. Her eyes flicked too. For just a moment he saw it, the mask crack. The soldier faded and the mother flickered back, her hand trembling before she forced it still. She holstered the weapon, voice flat. "We move now." Hayes wiped blood from his lip, nodding. "More will come. That was just an advance team." Slid from the car, his legs weak, the world spinning. He stared at the men on the ground, then at his mother. "You," his voice broke, "you could have killed them." Her eyes were steady but heavy with something he couldn't name. "I didn't, remember that." "But you could have," he whispered. She didn't answer. She just took his arm, guiding him toward the station wagon with Hayes already at the wheel. As they drove off, the gravel spitting beneath the tires, pressed against the window, watching the men they left behind shrinking into the dust. His chest felt hollow, terrified, awed. His mother was just someone who had once been a soldier. She was still one. And no matter how much she wanted to protect him from it, she had just shown him the truth. She was dangerous. And now, so was being her son. Why did the safe house feel less like refuge and more like a trap? Why did the silence inside its wooden walls press harder than the gunfire they had just escaped? The station wagon rattled to a stop on a dirt road that led nowhere else. A weathered cabin stood against a backdrop of endless pine, its windows shuttered, its roof bowed under years of neglect. Hayes killed the engine. The quiet that followed rang in his ears. His hands still shook. His throat was raw from breathing too fast. He couldn't erase the images. His mother firing without hesitation, men falling, the ringing crack of gunfire tearing through the Nebraska countryside. "Inside," Sarah said. Her voice was calm, but it wasn't soft. They entered the cabin. Dust lay thick, but the furniture was intact. A map of the hills curled on the table. A wood stove waited in the corner. Hayes shut the door and began checking windows, corners, locks, moving like a man who had done this 100 times. Sank into a chair. His legs didn't want to hold him anymore. His mother set the duffel down and began unpacking with the same quiet focus she'd had when teaching him survival drills. Water first, food second, weapons last. She didn't even look at him. That silence broke him more than words. Finally his voice cracked. "What are we doing here, hiding, running again?" Sarah didn't answer. "Say something." His voice rose, rough and desperate. "You almost killed those men. You shot them like you'd done it before, like it was nothing." Her hands stilled. Slowly she lifted her eyes. "It wasn't nothing." "You didn't even flinch," pressed, heat building behind his words. "You looked at them like they weren't people, like they were just targets." "They were," Hayes said from across the room. His voice was low, steady. "They would killed you both without hesitation." "I don't care," snapped. He turned back to Sarah, his chest rising and falling too fast. "You told me all these years we had to be normal, that we had to move, start fresh, blend in. And I believed you. I thought you wanted peace. But you didn't stop being that." Her jaw tightened, but her voice was soft, almost a whisper. "I wanted peace, but peace doesn't always want you." The words hung there heavy. Shook his head, pressing his palms to his eyes. He couldn't breathe right. Every part of him screamed with confusion, anger, fear, awe. He wanted to hate her for lying. He wanted to thank her for saving him. He wanted answers, and all he had were riddles. Hayes crouched near the window, eyes on the tree line. "We bought time, not much. We'll need to move again before dawn." His head shot up. "Again, we just got here." Sarah's voice was steady. "They'll track us. That first team was bait. Others are coming." "Then fight them," burst out. "Isn't that what you do? Isn't that what you showed me today?" The silence that followed was colder than the mountain air. Sarah's eyes held his, and for a moment he saw not the soldier, not the mother, but the fracture between the two. She stepped closer, kneeling so her eyes were level with his. Her hand touched his shoulder lightly, almost trembling. "You think what you saw was strength," she whispered. "It was. It was survival, and survival costs. Every man I've taken down, every choice I've made, I carry it. It doesn't go away, it builds. It breaks you from the inside." Her voice faltered. For the first time heard it, the crack of something human beneath the steel. "I didn't want that life for you, I wanted you untouched by it," she swallowed hard. "But I was wrong. They won't let you stay untouched, and now you've seen me for who I am." Blinked hard, his throat thick. "Who are you?" The question hovered raw, and for once she didn't hide. "I was Commander Sarah Mitchell, Phoenix Division. I led missions nobody will ever read about. I buried friends who never came home. I carried secrets that could kill nations. And when it was over, I walked away. Not for me, for you." The silence that followed was unbearable. His chest tightened. He had wanted answers, but now that he had them, they hurt worse than the lies. Hayes's voice cut in, low but urgent. "Movement, South Ridge." Sarah's hand dropped from shoulder, the softness gone in an instant. The soldier was back. She crossed to the window, scanning the tree line. In the distance, faint figures moved between pines. Slow, deliberate, surrounding. Hayes's jaw clenched. Scouts again, testing the perimeter. Rose, his fear boiling into something sharper. "Then we fight, right? We don't run this time." Sarah turned, her eyes dark with conflict. "If we fight, there's no going back. Once we draw blood again, they won't stop. They'll send wave after wave until we're buried." "Then bury them first," Hayes muttered. Sarah's silence was answer enough. His chest heaved. He didn't know if he wanted her to run or to fight. He didn't know which scared him more, losing her, or watching her become the person she was trying so hard not to be. And yet, as the figures crept closer through the trees, one truth hardened in him. Normal life was gone. Whatever came next, they were already in it. The question was no longer if they would fight. It was when. Why did the night feel alive, like every shadow leaned closer, listening? Why did the air itself seem to pulse with the weight of what was coming? Sat in the dim cabin, his back pressed to the wall, eyes darting to every sound outside. The glow of the lantern cast trembling shapes across the wood. His chest rose and fell too fast, but he forced himself to stay quiet. His mother's words replayed in his mind. "Look at me. Not them. Me." Sarah moved through the room like a ghost. Her motions were silent, efficient. She checked windows. She laid out spare magazines Hayes had brought. She positioned a hatchet by the door. Every gesture said what she didn't. They weren't running. Hayes leaned over the map on the table, tracing lines with a calloused finger. 3, maybe 4 teams, judging by movement. They'll encircle by dawn. Pressure first, then breach. Sarah nodded, eyes sharp. "They underestimate us if they think we'll wait." Swallowed. "Wait for what?" Her gaze flicked to him. For a moment he saw it, the mother who had once patched scraped knees and checked homework. Then it was gone, replaced by the commander. For them to make the first mistake. Hours stretched. Every creak of the cabin, every whisper of wind outside wound around his nerves. Hayes dozed briefly in a chair, rifle across his lap. Sarah never sat. She stood by the window, eyes scanning the tree line. At some point whispered, "Do you ever sleep?" Her lips curved in the faintest shadow of a smile. "Not when it matters." He wanted to tell her everything at once, that he was scared, that he hated this, that he hated her secrets but loved her more for them now. But the words clogged in his throat. He stayed silent. The first shot came just before dawn. Glass shattered, a bullet tearing through the window frame inches from Sarah's head. She didn't flinch. She pulled to the floor with one arm and returned fire with the other, the muzzle flash lighting the cabin in bursts. Hayes was up instantly, shouldering his rifle, sending rounds into the tree line. Shouts rang outside, boots on dirt, branches snapping. The siege had begun. His ears rang as he crouched behind the overturned table Sarah had shoved in front of him. His hands clutched the flashlight she'd given him days before, the batteries reversed to keep it dead. It was useless against bullets, but gripping it made him feel tethered, like he was part of something. Sarah moved with terrifying calm. She fired in short bursts, then shifted position, never staying in one place long. Hayes barked terse updates, 2 left flank. South window, his voice steady even as bullets ripped through wood. One figure broke cover, charging toward the cabin. Hayes dropped him with a single round, but 2 more replaced him, their rifles spitting fire. Splinters rained across his face. "Mom," he cried out. Her eyes flicked back to him for half a heartbeat, steady, fierce. "Stay down, stay with me." Time blurred, minutes felt like hours. Smoke curled through shattered windows. The cabin groaned under the onslaught. Then silence. Not peace, a pause, the kind of pause predators make before striking. Hayes reloaded, jaw clenched. They're repositioning, next wave comes fast. Sarah's eyes darted across the room. Then, without hesitation, she shoved the duffel toward. "Crawl, back room. There's a hatch under the floorboards. Go." He shook his head, panic flooding. "No, I'm not leaving you." Her hand gripped his face, firm but trembling just enough that he felt it. "Listen to me. If they breach, they'll aim for me first. Hayes second. You're their leverage. You survive. Do you hear me?" Tears burned his eyes. He shook his head violently. "I can't." "Yes, you can," she snapped, then softened, her forehead pressing briefly to his. "You're the reason I walked away from all of this. You're the reason I'm still breathing. Don't make me lose you now." Before he could answer, the wall exploded inward. The blast threw dust and smoke through the cabin. Figures surged through the breach, weapons raised. Hayes fired, dropping one before he was forced back behind cover. Sarah stood firm, her pistol snapping from target to target with ruthless efficiency. For every man who entered, another fell. But there were too many. Screamed, scrambling toward her, but she turned, shouting over the chaos. "Go." He froze, torn between instinct and obedience. Then Hayes's hand grabbed him, dragging him toward the back room. "Do what she says, kid." The hatch groaned as Hayes tore it open. Cold earth breathed up from the hidden space. His body shook as Hayes pushed him down into it. Through the haze of dust and gunfire, he caught one last glimpse of his mother. Her figure stood framed in smoke, weapon raised, eyes blazing. Every movement precise, every breath steady. She was a storm holding the line with nothing but her will. And in that moment understood, she wasn't fighting for herself. She was fighting to buy him time. Hayes slammed the hatch shut. Darkness swallowed him. Gunfire thundered above, shouts, crashes, then silence. Pressed his hands to his ears, rocking in the dirt, tears streaking down his face. He didn't know how long he stayed there. Minutes, hours. When the hatch finally creaked open, sunlight poured in. Hayes's face appeared, pale and bloodied but alive. He pulled out with a grunt. The cabin was wreckage. Smoke curled from shattered beams. The ground was littered with weapons, broken glass, and the bodies of men who wouldn't rise again. And there, leaning against the doorway, bruised and cut but standing, was Sarah. Her pistol hung limp in her hand. Her eyes met. For the first time, she looked not like a soldier, not like a commander, but like a woman who had given everything she had left and somehow was still here. Ran to her, burying himself in her arms. She dropped the weapon, clutching him tight, her body shaking now that the fight was over. Neither spoke, they didn't need to. Later, when the dust settled and the bodies were cleared, Hayes stood by the wreckage, his voice low. "They'll come again. They won't stop." Sarah's eyes were steady, her arm wrapped tight around shoulders. "Then neither will I." As they walked away from the ruined cabin, the morning sun broke through the smoke, casting long shadows across the dirt. Glanced up at his mother, her face worn, her eyes lined with something he finally understood, not just strength, but cost. And in the quiet that followed, the truth settled in him. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.